We all have that one friend who takes pride in the fact that he finished Dark Souls using the drums from Rock Band as his controller of choice or some shit like that. That guy who says that games that require you to get good at some form of thumb-eye coordination based mechanics like parrying, dodging, and jumping are the only video games worthy of being called such. I personally don't swear by these types of games, and I don't swear at them either, but man that I have a good time with Crimson Capes. Welcome to You Old Entertainment, and welcome to another episode of You Old Gamer Recommends. And today we're going to talk about Crimson Capes, a side-scrolling action RPG that takes place in a medieval fantasy setting. I think the most successful indie devs are those that narrow their focus to the one thing they want their game to be about, and make sure that that one thing works. And I think Crimson Capes is one of those games. This title is first and foremost about combat, specifically about timely parries and counterattacks, and it feels good. It's challenging enough, weighty, rewarding, and straight out badass. You play as Mylon, also known as the Storm, the leader of the Crimson Capes, a man whose task is to bring the king's justice to the four corners of his domain. And this entails chasing down and executing vile sorcerers who seek to undermine the king's power, and hunting and killing monsters and bandits who threaten the lives of his subjects. And that, in a nutshell, is also what the story of the game is about. Until it isn't. Mylon is not the only member of the Order of the Crimson Capes. It wouldn't be much of an order if he were.
No way!
Over the course of the game, he'll be joined by Scan, Feiyun, and Jonai, all of whom have their own strengths, weaknesses, and fighting styles. They also have unique special combat skills. And you need to figure out how to use some of these skills to access some areas and solve some puzzles. Feiyun, for example, can turn invisible, which is super useful in combat, but there is a part in which this magical tentacle keeps teleporting you to another area the minute it, sees you, making it impossible for you to get past it. But if you turn invisible, you can't sneak into the area where you're supposed to go, and Feiyun is the only one who can pull it off. Once you meet a new character, you can switch over to him whenever you reach a flower bed, which for all intents and purposes work like bonfires do in Dark Souls. Except there's usually one when and where you need it the most. Except in hunt areas, that is. So because combat is the main focus of the game, they really went all in with everything that has to do with it. There's a broad cast of regular enemies, elites, and bosses. Humanoid character animations were fully rotoscoped, and non-anthropomorphic creatures were painstakingly animated frame by frame. And they all have a decent array of attacks and defensive moves. Your characters also have a decent spectrum of moves. Your standard moves include quick attacks, heavy attacks, dodge, and parry moves. There is no blocking though, only perfect parries, and they are the key to your success in Crimson Capes. However, and hear me out here, the thing about this game, and when I say the thing, I mean the thing that makes it unique, interesting, and fun, is that perfect parries are not a pain in the ass to get right. So while deflecting enemy attacks with precision and seizing the opportunity to punish them for their mistakes is the turnstone in Crimson Capes, most of the times you don't get brutally punished for botching the parry. So the way I see it, it is pretty engaging and intense, but not frustrating. The challenge has been nerfed significantly since the game's 1.0 release, and even before that a little bit. And I am not sure that this was a good thing. I think that the game's combat design is meant to appeal to the git-gud crowd. You know, that one annoying friend we talked about at the beginning of the video. And those guys like a challenge, and there was something rewarding about dying several times before killing a boss, before the game got its 1.0 release, and now a lot of that is gone, so I don't know. This is not to say that the game is easy, but it's certainly not as difficult as it used to be, and I liked it a little better when it was harder. It made me feel better about my progress. In Crimson Capes, you gain experience by killing enemies, but you don't level up, which is interesting. You use your experience points as currency to buy skills and even items. And this is very interesting as a game mechanic. It makes the progression aspect of the game feel more streamlined, and I can always appreciate that. So I liked this as a mechanic. However, during the CBS session in which we showed Crimson Capes, the designer told us that Poor Lock's intention had been to make the game as immersive as it could be, and that's why the hub had been reduced to a minimum, that's why the skill tree was presented as tiny squares in the character's hands, and why the map was designed to feel like a slightly imprecise or referential drawing made by whatever would pass as a cartographer back in the day. But when you think of the concept of experience as currency, for both skills and trade, well, I don't find it very realistic or immersive. Speaking of skills, it took me a while to see value in the character's special skills in Crimson Caves. In Shinobi the Art of Vengeance, for example, and yes, I am aware that this is a very different type of game, just making a case here, every new skill that I learned felt like something that I needed, like that one thing that would give me an edge in such and such situation, or against such and such types of enemies. And when I tried said skill for the first time, it worked, and it worked the way I was expecting it to work. In Crimson Caves, I felt like skills were rather situational, and the situations for which they were meant to be useful weren't as easy to identify for me. My guess is that someone more versed in these types of games would surely get a hang on them a lot more easily, but I have to call it as I see it. I did eventually identify the skills that were more useful to me and the best times to use them, and I did end up using them regularly and having fun with them. Gear is also very interesting in Crimson Caves. The items that you get in this game are some of the best I've seen in quite a while. They are not your typical lame-ass +1 this or +2 that. These are items that will encourage you to play the game differently. Steel bracers, for example, heal you every time you successfully deflect an enemy attack. This of course will motivate you to parry rather than dodge enemy attacks. And they also play into your overall strategy. If you want to prioritize survivability, for example, you might want to equip Deadman's Skin, which gives you healing over time, the aforementioned Steel Bracers, and Child Doll, which gives you a chance to receive reduced incoming damage. Also, since characters are so different from each other, it pays to experiment equipping different items on different characters. They all share the same item slots, but you can't swap items around every time you switch characters, of course. Consumables are equally awesome, and some of them give you one hell of an advantage. Most potent ones are of course harder to come by, so you better make the most out of them and come out victorious every time you use them. Fuse bombs, for example, do massive AoE damage, but they hurt you too, so you have to know when and where to use them. Thunderstones do much less AoE damage, but they paralyze enemies, leaving them open for attacks. And they are also needed to figure out a certain puzzle, but I won't be spoiling it here. Items also tie into the exploration aspect of the game. Some of the best items you can only acquire by going well off the beaten trail into the game's non-mandatory areas. Speaking of which, there is an interesting feeling of adventure to Crimson Caves as well. There are many different biomes to explore, there are a lot of non-mandatory areas that you can go to where you'll find enemies that you can kill, secret loot that you can collect, and NPCs that give you tips on what to do, some of which are a little bit too spoilery, and from whom you can buy some stuff. At first I didn't like the world map at all, but it was because I really didn't understand it. But I came to a moment of,
Oh, I get it.
and now I think it's one of the best maps that I've seen in recent memory. The story is straightforward and simple to the point that it works just fine as an excuse for you to go out there and kill shit. But if you want to sink your teeth into it, you can also take the time to read the Journal of Blood Memory. There are interesting details there, like the fact that your order is called the Crimson Caves, because the cloaks your men wear got their color because they were drenched in witch blood as part of a ritual that gave them the power to absorb magic. From the very beginning, it's blatantly obvious that things at home are too good to be true, and that something is going to happen at some point. But you don't quite know how it's going to happen or who's going to be involved, so when the plot twist finally takes place, it's still somewhat interesting and intriguing. Just don't expect a great story or a complex, thought-provoking narrative from this title, and you should be okay. Let's talk about the things that I didn't like about the game. Most of them are nitpicks, but there are a couple of big issues too, so let's start with those. First, the game's difficulty got nerfed a little too much in my opinion. I'm not particularly good with Souls-likes or Souls-like adjacent games, but I don't mind getting my ass kicked a few times until I master a certain technique, a combination of techniques, or until I figure out a plan or a build to overcome a challenge. Accomplishments are as valuable as the effort that you have to put into obtaining them, and games like these thrive on making things difficult so that when you finally beat that boss or get through that pain in the ass level, you feel good about it. And this is how Crimson Caves felt before the 1.0 release. but that feeling has been watered down significantly along with the difficulty. Second, I didn't like the ending of the game. It felt anticlimactic, cliffhangery, and sequel baity. And it's a pity because I had a great time all the way through. I was never bored with the game, and I was pretty sure I was going to play it a second time. But man, I don't know about you, but for me, the ending of the game has a lot of weight in my decision on whether or not I'm going to play the game again. And then there are the nitpicks that I was telling you about. I also have a couple of those. First, I wish every character had his own thing to say to the NPCs they talk to in the game, especially since some areas seem to be designed to be played with a specific character. Alas, this is not the case. Your conversations go down in the exact same way regardless of whom you control at the time, and I think this was a wasted opportunity. Second, I think there is a very good chance that you'll meet the last member of the Crimson Capes very late in the game and barely get the chance to play as him. Who that member is depends on how you play the game though. And that's about it, but I would also like to talk about some things that I really liked about Crimson Capes. Things that aren't really features, mechanics, or even design choices. First, the game is unapologetically badass. You play a no bullshit claymore wielding dude who is part of an order whose job is to hunt down and kill unequivocally evil witches, bandits, creatures, and monsters. And that's all there is to it. And you are joined by 3 more dudes who aren't fucking around either. The first thing you see when you start the game is a dude who looks like a combination of Thor and Conan the Barbarian, summoned by lightning and rocking some serious moves with his sword while you hear bam 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 bam, and it's like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about, let's motherfucking go. The game looks and feels like an indie game made by a small team, so you immediately know what to expect. But as it happened with the gameplay, the efforts in regards to the game's production values went exactly where they were needed. You have mean looking monsters, you have badass execution animations with all the blood splattering that goes with it, and the oof and fuck yeah factor of the sound effects is just what you'd expect from a game that's all about killing shit. Crimson Capes is also 100% free of contamination. There's not a single trace of the post-2016 disease that has been infecting entertainment over the last 10 years. There's no preachy social messaging, absolutely no girl bossing, and characters look like they belong in the world of the game and not in modern day LA. Crimson Cape feels like a game that came out in 1987 for all the right reasons. The game takes roughly 20 hours to complete, which, in my book at least, makes it perfect as a palate cleanser to play between longer, more demanding games, but also as a main dish. It currently goes for $7 in my region, which I think is extremely good value for the price. And for all these reasons, Crimson Capes gets a solid "You Old Gamer Recommends" seal of approval from me. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs up. If you like what you are seeing on this channel, please consider subscribing and clicking that notification bell to avoid the usual YouTube shenanigans. Come check us out on Discord if you don't mind all the boomer talk that goes on there. I personally love it and wouldn't change it for anything. And share the video if you thought it was cool. Bye everyone.
You're excused. You can go back to playing video games.